Thank you.
Thank you for putting us in the mood, Jules and Patty. Cade Mila Falcha, everybody. 100,000 welcomes. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Utica. Here in this place, all are welcome, and all means all. Whoever you are, wherever you come from, whatever your station in life, whoever you love, whatever faith traditions you have, if any, you are welcome here. With reverence, we recognize that we are standing on the ancestral ground of the Haudenosaunee people, and it is with gratitude that we gather together in this welcoming place. A couple announcements. There's a climate change meeting after the service in the parlor. Does anyone else have an announcement?
Good morning, I'm Jerry Reed. I just wanted to call your attention to a couple of things. One, in the parlor, if you have a chance before the climate action meeting, go into the parlor. There's a new threefold tabletop display that promotes this church, and it's a tool that we can use when we go out into the community for events or any opportunity you have to put up a display. And to support that document or that display, there's two documents that kind of go along with our 200-year history. One is a small little 2-page, 3-page leaflet about where we have held worship services for the 200 years, various buildings, various locations where this church has met. The other document is more of a timeline of social justice and community building, significant events over the 200 years that we can attribute to either this church or members of this church being active in their community. So take a look at the display, and if you go out into the community or have an opportunity, there's a book to sign it out and take it. It only weighs 14 pounds, comes in a little, it comes in a little carry bag, so it's very portable. Thank you.
Thanks, Jerry. Any other announcements? Going once? Okay. For our call to worship, we will have a reading by Deborah Faust.
Good morning. This reading is called Come Sit by the Fire by Jennifer Kitchen. Come sit by our fire and let us share our stories. Let us hear your tales of far-off lands. Wanderer, and I will tell you of my travels. Share your experience of the holy within me. Worshipper, and I will tell you of that which I find divine. Come and stay, lover of leaving, for ours is no canavar of despair, but of hope. We would hear your stories of grief and sorrow as readily as those of joy and laughter, for there is a time and a place and a hearing for all the stories of this world. Stories are the breath and word of the Spirit of life, that power that we name love. Come, for our fire is warm, and we have seats for all. Come again and yet again. Come speak to me of what fills your heart, what engages your mind, what resides in your soul. Come, let us worship together.
And the chalice lighting, Michaela Parker.
Good morning. This morning for our chalice lighting, I'm reading Beacon of Freedom by Tracy Johnson. We kindle our chalice flame this morning, awakening the fire of our ancestors in our hearts. Beacon of freedom held out to light the way, light of reason illuminating the path, spark of courage igniting our spirits, aglow with hope for all we endeavor to do together. Holy flames of times past, brighten this present moment, that we may be the love that is our center and our foundation both. Blessed be.
St. Patrick's Day. Exactly what is a saint? Many traditions have saints. Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Jainism, Shinto, Zoroastrianism, and many don't. So in finding a common denominator, I would say that saints are people of great virtue, sometimes heroic, spiritual guides and mentors. In a religious context, they are believed to hold a privileged place with God. I suspect we all have heroes who live in a sacred place in our hearts. I certainly do. So my UU definition is that with or without a religious context, saints are our holy heroes. Now, long, long ago, in a place not far away, is how our story is going to start. But before the story starts, we have to say the saint we're talking about is Patrick. And we all know Patrick was a missionary credited with bringing a new religion to a tiny island in the far west of Europe in the 5th century, and that there is absolutely nothing in that circumstance that remotely calls for an international party day in his honor. But here we are. What I can derive from my research, this whole thing had its genesis in a collision of cultures. This collision of cultures led to the toxic intertwining of politics and religion. So let's go back to the beginning. Long, long ago, in a place not very far away, the island of Ayr, which you all know as Ireland, was inhabited by a mystical, magical people known as the Tuatha De Danann. That means children of the god Dana. Now, all was well until a group of people called the Milesians showed up, and they wanted to take the island for themselves. Well, of course, the Tuatha De Danann were not keen on this idea, and so a great war ensued. After a while, they realized neither side was going to win, so they decided to divide it evenly. But since they each wanted the whole thing, they figured out a way that they could split it in half with each side retaining the whole. Brilliant. So, the Milesians got the entire island above the ground, and the Tuatha De Danann got the entire island below the ground. Now, as you're scratching your head trying to figure that one out, remember, they are a magical people. And there, under the ground, they became what we call the fairies, the leprechauns, the cluricans, the banshee. Why am I telling you this today? Because in a few minutes, I'll be talking about Patrick's counterpart, St. Bridget, who herself is actually one of the Tuatha De Danann. First, though, to clarify Patrick's story. In his teens, he was captured from a Roman Christianized land, Britain, and brought to pagan Ireland as a slave. In one of his own writings that survived, he documented that there were already thousands there like him. These would have been slaves who had been captured in raids or prisoners of war, and they had children and passed on their Christian faith. Patrick was a rare one who escaped, but certainly most didn't. So we know that there were Christians on the island before Patrick. And 50 years before Patrick, the Pope sent a bishop, Palladius, to minister to them. However, since the overwhelming majority of the Irish people were pretty hostile to anything Christian, Palladius hot-footed it out of there in quite short order. It would make sense then that Patrick, although he did have a rough time of it, would find more acceptance in a culture that he understood because he had lived there for 6 years. But despite what we have been led to believe, Patrick was not the whole story of the conversion of Ireland. We also have St. Bridget. And here is the most interesting thing about St. Bridget. She is also a goddess. Long before the mortal person, St. Bridget, there was the goddess Bridget. And as I said, she was a member of the Tuatha De Danann. She was the daughter of Dagda, the father of the gods. Now, goddess Bridget is associated with wisdom, poetry, healing, protection, smithing, and domesticated animals. So with that as the spiritual backdrop, here comes Bridget, the human person. Born in the year 451, 18 years after Patrick arrived in Ireland, her mother was a Christian slave and her father was a pagan king. So she had a foot in both worlds. And she, like Patrick, spread the Christian message, comfortably integrating it into the existing pagan-based culture, not the other way around. My favorite Irish philosopher and poet, John O'Donoghue, in his book Anam Cara, describes it this way, quote, "The Celtic mind was not burdened by dualism. It did not separate what belongs together. The Celtic imagination articulates the inner friendship that embraces nature, divinity, underworld, and human world as one. The dualism that separates the visible from the invisible, time from eternity, the human from the divine, was totally alien to them." And so, very different from it was very different from the male-dominated hierarchy and control perspective that the Roman Christian church had. Bridget and Patrick had different styles, so they're often seen as complementary. Patrick focused on converting pagans through preaching. He was a top-down kind of guy. Bridget focused on charity, education, and the monastic life. And legends say that Patrick declared Bridget to be his spiritual equal. Now, here is an example of how uniquely integrated the Christian and pagan cultures were at that time. There's this book called Cormac's Glossary. It was written in the 9th century by Christian monks, okay, 400 years after Bridget. Here, Christian monks identify Saint Bridget as a goddess. So we have the Christians identifying Bridget as a goddess. In that culture, you certainly could have a saint who was also a goddess. This is not incongruous. In this book, she was said to be, quote, the goddess whom poets adored, unquote. And it said that she had 2 sisters, Bridget the healer and Bridget the smith. Now, this suggests that she may have been a triple deity. It makes sense to me because in studying the teachings of Jesus, you see that he was solely interested in treating all people, especially marginalized people, with justice and love. Nothing else was particularly relevant to Jesus, who they founded Christianity about, right? So I don't believe Jesus would have given one holy hoot if that love was understood through a goddess, a human, or a prune. Really, what matters is the love. So this, of course, would be a threat to the masculine, ego-based Roman Church, but the Irish of that early time were not yet strongly influenced by Rome. I digress a little bit. Okay. So, the Saint Bridget we know today is actually a conflation of the goddess Bridget and the Christian woman Bridget. Her feast is February 1st, the pagan feast of Imbolc. Now, for hundreds of years, the Irish practiced the faith within their culture, with its deep roots in mysticism, reverence for nature, and gender equality. Female priests were able to celebrate the Mass just like their male counterparts, and Bridget was an ordained bishop. But to the Roman Catholic Church, giving such status to a female person was an abomination. Regardless, the culture of Ireland marched on, and starting in the 6th century, Ireland's golden age began. While the rest of Europe was wallowing in the Dark Ages, for 300 years, in Ireland, there was a remarkable flourishing of art, literature, manuscript preservation, metalwork, and stone sculpture. Many historians believe that the great heritage of Western civilization, ranging from the Greco-Roman classics to Jewish and Christian works, would have been utterly vanquished were it not for the religious women and men of Ireland. So with that as our cultural, spiritual starting point, let's sing the hymn, We Are, 1051 in the Teal Hymnal.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage, fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy, brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, universe, who we are. For each child that's born, a morning rises and sings to the universe, who we are.
Part 2. Despite that rather significant contribution of the Irish Christians to humanity, the popes still had their undies in a bundle about the Irish version of Christian practice. And starting with the English invasion of Ireland in 1155, the values of Rome took hold, forcing women to be relegated to the subservient position they held throughout the Roman Empire. They even went as far as to declare that Mel, the bishop who ordained Bridget as a bishop, must have been drunk at the time and not realized she was a woman. Please. Look it up. So in my opinion, that is the reason that Patrick is given the credit for Ireland being Christianized, leaving Bridget out in the cold. But time went on. And in the early 1500s, the Protestant Reformation split Christianity, the English developed Anglicanism, the Scotch and the Scots-Irish took on Presbyterianism, and the Irish Catholicism. And in the 1700s, nearly 250,000 primarily Presbyterian Scots-Irish who identified as Irish had migrated to America. They were well-educated, industrious, skilled workers seeking economic opportunities and greater freedoms. And they did not have much trouble assimilating. And in 1762, a group of homesick Irish-born soldiers serving in the British Army marched through Lower Manhattan to a St. Patrick's Day breakfast at a local tavern. Thus, here in the colonies, the St. Patrick's Day parade was born. Now, a saint's feast day in Ireland or anywhere else was not a cause for jovial festivities. It typically included going to church and maybe having a special meal. There's an Irish joke that says, a holy day is like any other day, only duller. So it looks like this parade thing was actually to honor the homeland, Patrick being its symbol. The question, though, is why did it become such a huge deal? Well, while they were marching in Manhattan, the Irish in Ireland, i.e. Catholics, faced fierce oppression. The political goal of the English crown was the eradication of the Irish culture. Now, starting in 1695 with the establishment of the penal laws, the Catholic Irish were not allowed to own property. They were not allowed to express their culture in any way. No speaking their native language, no traditional clothing, no Irish art or music, including, because the harp was a traditional Irish instrument, they ordered the destruction of every harp in the land. And if you were caught with a harp in your possession, you were executed. It's not like it's against the law, they're going to send you to court. No, you're done. So they also could not educate their children. They could not work in the professions or join the army, and they could not practice their faith. If a man was found to be a Catholic priest, he was killed on the spot. Done. According to the historian L. Perry Curtis, the English saw their Catholic neighbors as, quote, subhuman creatures in the racial hierarchy. Now, slowly, these laws were lifted, finally ending in 145 years later, in 1840. But the prejudice and hatred toward Catholics was firmly entrenched. And a mere 5 years later came what we call the Great Hunger, when their only source of sustenance was wiped out by a fungus. The Catholic Irish died by starvation and disease by the hundreds of thousands. And within 5 years, 1 million people died this way. That would be, based on their population, that would be the equivalent of the United States losing 84 million people to starvation and disease in the next 5 years. Wrap your head around that one. But here is the most important historical fact. There was never any famine in Ireland. There was a worldwide failure of a single plant due to a fungus. But it affected the Irish because it was the only food that they were allowed by their landlords to have access to. During the years the potato crop failed, there was plenty of food produced in Ireland, but it was forbidden for the Catholic Irish to have it. Under armed guard, food convoys continued to export wheat, oats, barley, and livestock to England while Ireland starved. Another 2 million managed to leave or were forced to. And it's important to note that these people were not emigrating for better economic opportunity and greater freedoms. They were leaving their beloved homeland simply in order to stay alive. Now here's where we're going to see a lot of parallels with marginalized people today. When the Irish Catholics arrived in the port cities like Boston and New York, they had zero resources. They found themselves in a society that completely hated them for being immigrants, hated them for being Catholic, hated them for being a strain on the welfare budget. They were stereotyped as lazy, dirty, violent drunks, and they were said to be rapists. And conspiracy theories abounded. My favorite was this: that the Irish were coming here by the hundreds of thousands, not because they were starving, but because they were sent here by the Pope. And their mission was to overthrow the United States government and establish in its place a papal state to be headquartered in Cincinnati. I would say you can't make this up, but somebody did. And people believed it. So what do you do in that situation? You cling together with the only thing you have, your faith. You summon your courage. You trust in your active expression of hope, and you do what you must, believing that the dawn will come. They took the most menial and dangerous jobs and did what they needed to do to survive, which sometimes was far, far from the honorable thing. But they kept their faith. And in a show of defiance, showing strength in numbers, their parades grew, marching to proclaim their pride in who they were. They were Irish, they were Catholic, and they were proud. And who represented that better than their holy hero, St. Patrick? And so rather than a devout display of reverence for a holy man, the parades morphed into a public demonstration of ethnic and religious pride. And that is how St. Patrick became such a big deal in the United States. So where are we now? This year, the New York City Parade will have 150,000 marchers, and 2 million spectators will line Fifth Avenue to see it. There's a lot of information on the back table there about the parade, including the $50,000 of scholarships that they give to neurodiverse people in honor of St. Patrick's Day. It's all back there. Anyway, we have heard the expression, everybody is Irish on St. Patrick's Day. Obviously, that means different things to different people. Where that reflects joy and celebration, it is a lovely sentiment. But I have to acknowledge that sadly, this proud celebration has become corrupted by the stereotype of the Irish being drunk and violent. And so it is insidiously incorporated into the American culture so badly that even many Irish Americans don't recognize it for what it is. It is hurtful. And I pray it dissolves sooner than later. So, what is its relevance in 2025? Well, the more capitalism cashes in on it, the less it seems to have. They're cashing in on it with green milkshakes, green beer, green bagels, and furniture sales. So where is the relevance? And since it means different things to different people, I can't speak to the relevance question universally. I can only speak of my hope for its relevance, that our celebrations are affirming, constructive, and inclusive. For me, St. Patrick's Day will always be a symbol of pride in being Irish. Pride to have survived hundreds of years of attempted annihilation. Pride to have survived political, economic, and religious discrimination. Pride to have survived hatred. Not only to have survived, but to have flourished. Contributed greatly to the arts, science, literature, sports, and politics. Contributed to the evolution of cultures worldwide. That is worth celebration, enormous celebration. Now, since this is, after all, a church service, the purpose of this entire talk is to drive to a bit of heartfelt reflection. Reflection which I hope advances our respect for the dreams and, yes, the pride of all oppressed people, BIPOC people, LGBTQIA people, neurodiverse people, physically impaired people, immigrants, women, religious refugees. God bless us, everyone. Everyone. So today, the 9.5% of Americans who boast Irish ancestry have every reason to boast and just celebrate themselves. And everyone else is invited to join in the fun. Happy St. Patrick's Day. And now our hymn, Rising Green.
My blood doth rise in the roots of yon oak. Her sap doth run in my veins. Boundless my soul like the open sky, where the stars forever have lain. Where the stars forever have lain. My hands hold the weavings of time without end. My sight as deep as the sea. Beating my heart sounds the measures of old, that of love's eternity. That of love, that of love, that of love's eternity. I feel the tides as they answer the moon, rushing on a far distant sand. Winging my song is the wind of my breast, and my love blows over the land. And my love, and my love, and my love blows over the land. My foot carries days of the old into new, sows deep in the earth, rising green to bring a new day. Rising green, rising green, rising green to bring a new day.
Thank you. And now a brief meditation, which is actually the Celtic benediction. Deep peace of the running wave to you. Deep peace of the flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the Son of Peace to you. And now Carol Gable has a message for us.
Good morning. The Stewardship Committee asked me to just talk a few minutes about why I give to this church as we are in our campaign for next year's budget, as you can see. So I was just going to let you know that I started attending UU Fellowship of Missoula, Montana back in 1993 when my oldest son Matthew was born. I would walk from home to my job at the University of Montana and pass this house that was a UU Fellowship. And it always had signs in front about their upcoming sermons and events, and they were always interesting topics like saving endangered species, overpopulation, love and acceptance of all people, nuclear disarmament. I wanted to raise my child in a church community, but I knew it wasn't going to be the Catholic religion that I grew up in. But I figured I would try this place, and I have been a UU ever since. My two sons attended Sunday services almost every week of their lives, participating in religious education, coming of age, our whole lives, UU youth groups. They went to the Adirondack summer camp north of here from the age of 10 through their teens and attended UU youth conferences throughout Ontario and New York during their teens. So what does that have to do with why I give to this church? It's because I believe that being a UU these past 31 years has made me a better person, and the entire UU community helped me raise two wonderful sons. I will always be grateful. Taking time, at least once a week, to reflect on what it means to live a good life, to love this world and all its beauty and ugliness, to be in community, to hear people like Mary talk has enriched my life immensely. The wisdom, kindness, and empathy I've observed in some of my favorite UU ministers, such as Max Coots, Wade Wheelock, Ann Marsh, Lori Staubitz, Karen Brammer, have really been inspirational to me and frequently is just what I need to keep going when times are dark. And of course, my UU community, whether in Missoula, Montana, Middlebury, Canton, Utica, and almost anywhere really, gives me hope and an opportunity to explore the big questions in life. I'm grateful to all of you for being in this community with me and working to build a better world, a world with love at the center. And that's why I'm here and I give to this church.
Thank you, Carol. The offering will now be taken and gratefully received. And now it's time for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. And now for the benediction, Phyllis Fogg.
May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand.